you want to say about yourself, he'll have about 10 positive things to say. You've got to stay there. You've got to stay in his presence. Let me hear just a second talk about a man who we were at I think we're at some kind of a celebration, some kind of party in the school year. I don't know what celebration we were at, but we were at a little steakhouse. There was about 9 or 10 of us at the table. And I was there because I had been invited. I didn't start the party. And so, but it was school related somehow. And this gentleman that was in that party because maybe his wife was a teacher or something. I can't remember the details. All I remember was that I was situated with my son next to this gentleman. And this gentleman said to me, "Are you Dr.Jeana?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I know you." He said, "I want to ask you a question." And we started crying. And so we're in a public restaurant, you know. I mean, it's not unusual that people start crying when they're talking to me. It happens a lot. I'm accustomed to it. But it was unusual that this gentleman, who I had not spoken to before, started to cry. And so I was listening to him intently, and he said, I hear you talk about the presence of God. And he said, I don't understand that kind of love. I don't understand what you're talking about. And I said, all right, well, what do you do to be close to the Lord? This is probably going to embarrass some people. He would get up every morning early. I mean, real early. At least 2 hours before he was supposed to go into work. He would go through his routine, get ready for the day. Then he'd get in his car and he would go park at some shopping center and sit there for an hour reading the Word and praying a whole hour. Now, how many of you in here can say that every morning you get up to spend a whole hour with the Lord every day? How many can say that? I mean, you're wonderful. And I hope you're getting more out of it than this gentleman did. But he would spend a whole hour alone, praying, confessing, reading the Word, or listening to a tape. He was committed to that time alone. And I said, you do this every day? And he says, yes. And so I don't want to give you the long version of how I conversed with him. It was pretty good. It was pretty powerful. At least it was for him. But here was the essence of my response. I said, isn't it a shame that you show up and you're that faithful, but you don't hit the target? Isn't that amazing that you avail yourself that much time? You're so dedicated, but you're not intimate. I said, doesn't that bother you? And he said, yes. I said, would you like me to tell you how to get intimate? And so we went, I'll just briefly cover it with you. I told him not keep going to that place, but don't bring the prayer list.
Amen.
Don't get your schedule out about what scriptures you're supposed to read that day. Sit there in that parking lot and tell the Lord you love him and that you're here. Then, when you feel awkward, start talking to him about what he did for you this past week. Or start telling him some of your concerns about this past week. Then, if you saw his hand anywhere in your life last week, thank him for it. If you come up against a brick wall someplace in your life, tell him about it. And I said, you won't be able to sit there. You won't have to wait a whole hour before the Lord starts to reassure you. It doesn't take that long. In all your ways acknowledge him, he will direct your path. Or how does he direct your path? I mean, does he start putting elements from heaven? Show you that this is the path that I just okay. Am I having a party with the sound?
If you're having a party, I want to get involved. So I'm going to just keep going. God bless our radio listeners.
There we go. I didn't touch a switch, promise.
I didn't do it. But anyway, you're going to get, keeps coming on and on, isn't it? It could be. I mean, I've got experts that deal with this all the time, so we'll just see how they solve this problem. Oh, let's see. I don't know if I should whistle. Or if I should stay on that. I think it's a good story.
But don't know what to say. I'm innocent. And so this gentleman was so concerned,
obviously concerned. He was emotionally distressed, talking to someone he has never spoken to privately before. And so I asked him, I said, well, isn't it sad that you're showing this much devotion and this much diligence and you're talking in this much time? Stop and think about it. All those hours that he was spending every day, and he was a family man. He had responsibilities. And yet he devoted that time in his God category. He put that God time first. And so I just basically told him, I said, you need to relax and don't go into that next time, that next hour you spend with him. Don't go with any preconceived ideas. Don't go down your list. Don't read the scriptures that are on your list of scriptures to read that day. So let's get out of the remote behavior and let's just start relating to the Lord. And then I gave him an illustration about how you can't say the same thing to your wife every morning. If you say one thing, it melts her heart, makes her knees weak, and she responds to you. I said, that's going to be beautiful for that day. If you do the same thing the next day, it's going to get weird. And so, how do you think it makes the Lord feel? This God who has basically forbidden us to be repetitious when it comes to praying, spending time with Him. He wants it to come from the heart. He doesn't want it to come from a book. But how do you think He feels when you just designate that time every hour with Him and then you're a robot?
You just say what you want to say and pray what you want to pray, and you don't sit there long enough for a response. How do you think it makes Him feel? You're clocking in a duty. You're showing up for work. You know, there's a lot of people who are at jobs that they don't like. There's a lot of people in relationships that they don't like. But I believe that I should keep my first love activated for the Lord, and I believe, being myself in a long-term covenant relationship, I believe that it should always be fresh. I don't believe in a relationship that you're committed to for a lifetime. I don't believe it's supposed to get stale. I mean, it'll have its ups and downs. We know that. And Satan hates marriage, so he'll do whatever he can to break you up. But I don't believe in just existing. I don't believe in that. That's not in my lifestyle. I don't believe in just getting into the negative groove or whatever it is. I believe in stirring things up. I believe that things should be exciting. I believe that things should be organized. I believe that things should be cleaned up. I believe that things should be, that we should always look happy and fresh and bright and clean, and that when we see each other, there should be a measure of excitement. I believe in this. And so that's what the Word is talking about here. And when I shared that with that gentleman, you would have thought I handed him a giant Snickers bar. He was like a little boy. He was so happy. He never thought to spend that hour listening. He was determined that he was going to be diligent, and in his world, diligent meant regimented. Show up, clock in. Show up, clock in, show up, clock in. But he was missing out on the intimacy with the Lord. And so that's a brief story. I mean, that's a brief version of a long story, but it's a way of me announcing to you that I believe the covenant relationships that we're in and the relationship that we have with the Lord should always have a note of clean, fresh, new to it. If it's clean and fresh and new, then it's going to be a sustainable relationship. And so here she's talking about her obvious flaws, and he counters those negative comments by saying, no, this is what you are. You're beautiful. She said, like, I'm just a humble little lily in the valley that grows in deep and difficult places, but you're growing. It might be deep, it might be difficult, but mark it down, you're growing. And so he says, like the lily among thorns, so are you, my love, among the daughters. Like an apple tree among the trees of the wood, she says, so is my beloved shepherd among the sons, cried the girl. They're going back and forth, trying to outdo each other with these compliments. Under his shadow I delighted to sit, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. Keep your finger there in Song of Solomon, chapter 2, and let's run over to Galatians. And I just wanted to encourage you with this word. She, in the Song of Solomon, is enjoying his fruit. And I wanted you to be mindful of the fruit of the Spirit. In Galatians 5, verse 22, we already saw what the works of the flesh were. They're not worth mentioning unless I were teaching that subject. And if I were teaching that subject, then I would be thorough on this point. But what I want to encourage you in today is the description of the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit, now just listen to these words. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering. Now, what is long-suffering? It's suffering long without changing your sweet attitude. That's what long-suffering is. It's not just enduring it, trying to wait until it's over, but it's suffering long. Now, I'm having to do that in this season because I'm getting so tired of waiting on people to make an offer on this campus. Just so tired. But I go back and I remind myself, I'm not in charge, you're in charge. You've got the sweet deal. I'm not trying to do a deal. I'm trying to do a deal of a lifetime. And so I keep reminding myself and the Lord, you're in charge. I'm just the facilitator. I trust you. So I want to come out of this season on the other side of the sale without repenting for my bad attitude while I was waiting. So long-suffering means that we're holding out without changing our kind disposition. Gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and meekness means teachable. Temperance, temperance means self-control. Against such there is no law, and they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. All right, now I want to go back to Song of Solomon, chapter 2, and I want you to see in verse 3 that she's talking about her shepherd. Now they're having a dialogue, a love language. Like an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved shepherd among the sons, cried the girl. Under his shadow I delighted to sit, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. So what am I receiving when I sit under his shadow? I'm receiving everything he requires you and me to walk in. He's got that in abundance. So you know how when you're dealing with a person and you go, man, I missed that. I need to sharpen up on that. You know, I was short-tempered. I wasn't patient. I didn't have a sweet disposition. I was seeking my own. I wasn't really laying down my life. I need to go back to the drawing board and get that right. Well, in relationships, we have a chance to get it all right. But in God's world, he never gets it wrong. He never has to go back and tweak his ability to love you, encourage you, be patient with you, be long-suffering with you, be temperate. The fruit of the Spirit, that's the Spirit of God, capital S, the fruit of the Spirit that he requires us to develop and walk in, he's already that, and he's giving it in abundance. And when you take the time to sit with him, that personality rubs off on you. Did you notice how when you get around people, those people affect your behavior? If you're around agitated people, if there's a tendency to get agitated. If you're around mean people, there's a desire to retaliate. So you're going to get into that game to win, because you won't be spoken to like that, or whatever, you know, or you won't let any of your loved ones be spoken to like that or be treated like that. So when you're around people, sometimes they trigger things on the inside of you. Listen to me. Listen very carefully to me. When you're spending time in the presence of the Lord, it does nothing but make you better. Even if you go in like this young lady did in Song of Solomon and just talk about all of your defects, all of your flaws, he just kind of yawns in your face. He's waiting for you to shut up so he can tell you how beautiful you are in his eyes. And so that love that he shows us, going back to the brother who was desperate to find out how I can speak of God in such intimate terms, I said, because I let him lavish me. I let him do what he wants to do with me. And I let him do it over and over and over and over and over. He's a giver. So the way to satisfy a giver is to receive. He is jealous. His name is jealous. So the way to satisfy jealousy, or my God, the way to satisfy my jealous God is to show him that there's no other interests. And a way that you prove that is not just by your words, but the time you spend with him. And so my husband, you know, he just freaks out when I start talking about spending time away from the house and spending time alone with the Lord. He always has freaked out, but now we're older, and so I don't really want to run away from home, but I just crave to be in that presence that's so pristine. And you have to be in a place where you don't allow interruptions. I mean, how many of you, those of you who have been married, those of you who have raised children, how many of you knew that sometimes if you wanted to get that quality connection, you were going to have to either get a date night, get a room, or go out of the city, right? I mean, if you're raising little kids, you're always locking the door. Mary Rachel used to come up to our door and, no, listen, are you loving? Because I didn't want to lie to her. I didn't want to tell her we're talking about the house bills, you know. We have a lot of things to talk about. I didn't want to lie to her. I just said people who are in love need time for loving. And so she would knock on the door and say, are you loving? She does it now. She's living with us now. She and my grandson do it. Are you loving? But what does love need? Love needs an atmosphere. It has to be tended to. It has to be so protected. Oh my gosh. Why? Because the slightest interruption can spoil everything. And we'll talk about that in this chapter. So the one that you're sitting with, I've learned how to tap into the very, very best of my husband. We had a dispute yesterday. And so then we work it out, and then he's so happy. He is so happy when I say, you want to hang with me? He's so happy, especially when he's just apologizing for something. Because my standard was, okay, buddy, I'll give you some distance if that's the way we're going. Because I can't really tell you everything that you need to hear, because then you'll tell me I'm acting like a mother. So I'm saying quit acting like a kid, but we can't go there because that never gets resolved. So I just get quiet, and he wants to know why I'm quiet, and he hates it when the atmosphere is, it wasn't tense for me, it was just quiet. There's no telling you, there's no teaching you, you've got to get with this. But anyway, he finally listened. And then when I said, well, I don't have to, now he had just told me the day before, if you need to take time to spend with the Lord, I would like you to drive, just go anywhere during the day, come back home so I know you're safe at night. I bought the argument. So then yesterday when he kicked up dust, I said, okay, I'm going to go drive around like you suggested. It's a good suggestion. He went, it's almost like the daddy in the big fat Greek wedding. Why do you want to leave me? But how many of you know that sometimes you have to sweep away the I don't know what to call it. It's emotional debris. You have to sweep it away someplace so that you can think clearly. So when he saw me turn it around and say, I'm not rejecting you, honey. You want to go with me? I mean, I had pulled up to the house saying, go ahead and do what you do, and I'll do what I do. And so he just sat there. When he knew that I was going to take him with me, oh my gosh, he was so excited, like a little kid. It was like I was giving him this total acceptance. And I wasn't rejecting him before. I don't care for the words. I don't care for the attitude, Park the attitude, buddy. And so put it on the curb. But anyway, it was so funny because when we went out then, we walked into a little store, and he was like a kid. He was like a kid. He would come up on me. He would just start kissing my neck and everything. Well, it was blessing these ladies who were shopping because they were going, oh, my gosh, look how precious they are. And he said, yeah, we just got married. Now, that's not his line. That's my line. But anyway, it's my line. But he's borrowed it. And he said, we just got married. But he waits so long for the punchline. I said, tell him, where's the punchline? And so he said, we just got married 47 years ago. And then they go, oh, my gosh, well, you act like newlyweds. Well, they're going on and on and on about how his affection towards me was touching their heart. What he gives me, every woman prays for. And so I know that. I know that in the package that I have with my natural lover needs to be protected. And I need to be reminded when he behaves adversely that in that same human is what blesses me the most. So I have to figure out how to punch all of those coordinates to get that, the one that touches my heart. I have to get that one out. And you've heard people say, your man will be whatever. There's a prince and a pauper in every man. And the one who comes out is the one you address. And so if I'm treating my husband like a prince, he's going to behave like a prince. If I'm treating my husband like a pauper, he's going to go into a shadow. Are you listening? So I understand my role in mining his treasures, but he has a role to play too. So the thing about it is that with the Lord, when he comes to you, there's nothing that he has to change. There's nothing that aggravates anybody. The only thing that would aggravate you about the Lord is his command. Because he does speak. He does hear. He does extend his hand to bless, and we appreciate the fact that he hears our prayers, right? We appreciate the fact that he extends his hands to bless, but are we always happy when he speaks? When he speaks, I heard this one youth pastor one time at a conference say, I think you were there too, Pastor Genevieve. He said, when God speaks, always something changes, and it's not he. When God speaks, something always has to change. So he said, his trick question was, how many of you love to hear the Lord speak? And everybody's hand went up. He said, I don't. He said, I'm just going to be honest with you. When God speaks, something has to change, and it's never he. So when he speaks, it's because he's setting something in order. And I love the fact that he speaks. I love the fact that he's near. I love the fact that he's got a plan that's bigger than my plan. I love the fact that my life lines up with what the Lord says. I mean, that's my assurance that I'm going to reach the target for my life, is doing what he says and staying intimate with him. All right, so I delighted to sit, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. What fruit? He's loving. And then I was thinking about the love relationship and the natural. You know, when everything is firing on all cylinders, there's love, there's excitement, there's passion, there's joy, there's peace. You know, it's relaxing to get around someone who thinks the best of you. It's relaxing. It's life-giving. And so in the natural, we can veer from that because things start to bother us. You know, the way your husband squeezes the toothpaste. Well, I've got a solution to that. Get your own bathroom. That's what saved our marriage. We have our own bathroom, and we have our own vehicles. And if we go traveling somewhere, I'm always the driver. Why? Because my husband's driving literally makes me seasick. I can't rest. Nobody sleeps when he's driving. But when I'm driving, everybody sleeps. So when I drive, it's therapeutic. So I just learned, rather than staying tense, we just have our own vehicles. And it works out beautifully like that. And when we travel, I drive. It works out beautifully like that. I know, right? Do you like it when someone else drives? Oh, you like that. So you mean our arrangement works for you. Oh, okay, good. I didn't know that, or I didn't know if you were the committed driver. Works for you too. Where your kids can't drive yet. So in our relationship with the Lord, he's feeding us all the time. He thinks positively of us all the time, because remember, the good news with you and me is that we are not dealing with a God who's looking at us from our past. Even what we did yesterday, even what we did this morning, he's not looking at that. He's looking at us through the sacrifice of his son. So he doesn't talk to us like who we are. He talks to us like who we will be. He sees that. He sees us complete in Christ Jesus. Isn't that spectacular? So don't be surprised when he says all the loving things. You might not be used to that, but he's got that in abundance for you. And all the fruit that he requires us to walk in, he is that all the time. So he applies that abundantly when we sit in his presence. You know, I never got feedback from the brother who was spending all that diligent time for God, but was missing his time with God. And so I hope that those things that I suggested put him on a path where he could literally experience the presence of God. That's important. And you know, you can't really talk about intimacy to other people if you haven't experienced it yourself. It will just be religion. But when there's joy, and those ladies in the store yesterday, when they were going, oh oh my gosh, y'all are so precious, because they saw him just after me. You know, I would go and look at this section, and he'd be right on me. I'd go and look at the household decorations, and he'd be right on me. And that's the benefit of being intimate. You know, I had triggered something that caused him to be very grateful that he was with me. And so the ladies were just going, oh, and I said, but what y'all don't know is that we just had a very huge argument. And that blessed them. It blessed them to see the recovery time. It blessed them to see that there was no distance between us. I mean, this was first love stuff, you know, very close, very intimate. And then on top of that, he blessed me so much because I told him about a week ago, I'm really desirous about getting into the book of Joshua. And my precious husband went and got all kinds of references, started printing them out on the printer about the book of Joshua. And I said, well, actually, thank you for all this, but I actually just wanted to read it. And so he said, well, I can put a tape on where you can listen. I mean, he wanted to be so helpful. And I said, I'll tell you what, let me pull it up right now on the computer, and I'll read it out loud. How's that, buddy? And so we did that, and I just can't wait to get back into that study with him, because we're in the beginning of chapter 6 now, and we're already printing out the maps of Joshua's conquest so that we can watch where he travels to conquer this area that God had given them. And it wasn't an easy task. So we're just getting so excited. But there's that side of my husband that I never want to leave. Are you with me? And then there's another side to my husband that I could do without. But that's not the case with God. What you want to stay away from is his judgment, because he's not just jealous. He's not just love. He's not just a consuming fire. He is the judge. So you want to live a life where God doesn't have to judge anything. And one thing we know about that is when we show mercy, we know that mercy rejoices in the day of judgment, because you can't give it without getting it. And what that scripture says to me about mercy rejoicing in the day of judgment means that whatever I do to show people mercy, God's ringing it up on my account. And on the day of judgment, if I've done anything, which I'm not planning on doing anything that will keep me from the love and the rewards. I'm after the rewards. I'm not just after heaven. I want to go there with bells and whistles. I don't want to live this life just making it. I want to live this life in honor, in integrity, with rewards. I'm expecting the crowns. I need crowns so that I can lay them at his feet. I'm not going there naked. I'm not going to go through that refiner fire and then wind up in heaven, but nothing to show for it from the earth. I'm not going to go in that way. Are you with me? So I do my due diligence to make sure my days count for living in his presence. Here we see a man and a woman who are in love with each other, no different from any other man or woman that would fall in love. However, you and I know that love can walk away. The feelings of love, the feelings of desire can walk away. And so then we don't know, and then other things happen that we don't even want to talk about, that could be not just indifference, but cruelty. We don't even want to talk about that. We just want to talk about this love relationship, how therapeutic love is, but love can distance itself. It can turn into something else. And obviously, with this disclaimer about the Song of Solomon, remember how many wives he had, how many concubines he had. So this might just be, who knows what number this is, if we're talking about the natural relationship between King Solomon and one of his conquests, one of them. So the man had a way, if we're talking about the man. But if we're talking about God, that faithfulness and that attentiveness never goes away. It's always there. So you don't need to sing songs about, Lord, light my fire. I was listening to an old Keith Green song the other day. Oh, Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see. And when my eyes are on, when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Oh, Lord, please light the fire that once burned bright and clear. He won't do it. He won't do it. Replace the lamp of my first love that burned with holy fear. He won't do it. You have to go back to your first love. You have to keep the fire burning. And actually, if you're close to him and you maintain that intimacy with him, I'm not talking about church attendance. I'm talking about clocking in with him, spending time with him, consecrating that time with him, where not only you can talk, but he can talk. That's the most important thing, is when he starts to speak. Because the way he thinks, the love that my husband has for me changes the way I think about myself. The way God thinks about me changes my opinion of myself. I'm not going to stand and fight against someone who believes the very best of me. I'm not going to convince them to think otherwise. You would be a fool to do that. Just go ahead and accept that love. Go ahead and accept that affirmation. Go ahead and receive until you believe what he says. Because when you believe what he says about you, then things start popping. Things start happening in your home, in your life, in your bank. All right. He brought me to, in verse 4, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. For love waved as a protecting and comforting banner over my head when I was near him. Whew. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. I can feel his hand under my head, and his right hand embraces me. Now I think that's pretty standard love making. You know, you're in a cuddled embrace. One hand is embracing you, the other hand is free to express itself. So I think in this case I don't see anything spiritual about that. I see that this is a love's tangle, and love's tangible and standard embrace. He said, I charge you, O you daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field, which are free to follow their own instincts, that you not try to stir up or awaken my love until it pleases. That's one thing I noticed about our love, my husband's and my love, when we first got married, that when we would have love's fill, there would always be this almost coma-like rest. And the rest was as therapeutic as the love expression was exciting. And so we learned, don't stir, my beloved. If one got up before the other, we wouldn't stir that rest, because that rest was so therapeutic. It had been induced by the highest pleasure that a husband and wife can experience. And so we learned, don't disturb. We learned how to protect that intimacy. We learned how to protect that privacy. And that's so important because, you know, as time ticks on, there's things that change. And you just don't, it's not that you don't love the person anymore. Those things are not at the forefront anymore. You know, I used to tell my husband, I said, I can't stand to be around older people because all they talk about is their body parts. And then when I got there, I went, wait a minute. You know, wait a minute. When we were younger, we talked about sex and having babies. You know, we talked about how to be successful in those areas, right? And when you get older, I'm telling you, the things that happen in your body are big time stuff. Now I understand. So when my husband and I go to any of the doctor's appointments, we'll just sit there, and my husband, being the evangelist that he is, he'll start up a conversation with anybody, and when they're hurting, they'll start talking about their problems, and that is exciting to my husband and me, because we can talk all day about what happens in our bodies. You know, we can encourage them until the cows come home. We are so good at it. That was one thing that my daughter and her son, my grandson, learned when they came to their house, is that every evening we go to bed we pile up in the bed, we watch something funny on TV, and we have prayer together as a family. Every morning, if you have time, we get up and we ask, how was your night? It happens every day. How was your night? Did you sleep well? Did you have pleasant dreams? You know, we get feedback. And, oh my gosh, my daughter didn't know how to do that, and my grandson is in his element. Because my grandson, he will tell me if there's any twinge or any pain or any discomfort in his little 12-year-old body. He is an honorary senior citizen. I said, Irvin, if you're having fun in this house, imagine what you would do if I took you to visit in a nursing home. You would have so much fun. And he's got tons of compassion. He's just so wonderful. It's a blast. But what happens is that we take a survey. You know, are you doing all right? Everything okay? Was your night pleasant? That's important stuff to us right now. And so in this love-making process, we don't get tangled in that embrace, but every detail about my husband's body is important to me. And every detail about my body is important to him. And I encouraged him one day, I said, isn't it neat that as we grow older, our wrinkles fit? You know, you're not out there looking for somebody younger. I'm not out there looking for somebody younger. And I said, it wouldn't work anyway because our wrinkles wouldn't fit. Are y'all with me? All right. So he said in verse 7, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field, which are free to follow their own instincts, that you try not to stir up or awaken my love until it pleases. So don't stir that rest, that supernatural rest that comes in that moment of intimacy. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. Protect it. Vividly, she pictured it. The voice of my beloved shepherd. Behold, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young hart. Behold, he stands behind the wall of our house. He looks in through the windows. He glances through the lattice. My husband likes to sneak up on me. He's like stealth because he's seen me shocked so many times, and for some sick reason, it makes him happy when he scares me. Demented, but anyway, he just comes so stealth you can't even hear a creak, and that's a miracle in and of itself with our bones the way they are. But he'll come up and he'll just appear, and it reminds me of him when I read this. You know that he's playful. You know, he's looking, he's playful. Not anything weird or kinky about this. It's just sporting. My beloved speaks and says to me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. I believe that that is the cry of the Spirit of God 24/7. I do not believe the Lord is ever satisfied with the time we spend with him. I believe time spent with him, he wants more. He wants more, and he wants more. And that's okay, because his name is jealous. That's okay. He created me. And when I stop to think about it, of how can I say this? The way I know how to summon the sovereign. The way I know how to not only get his attention, but to please him. You know, there's many people who love my husband, but he only has one lover. Well, two, including Jesus. But where in this world is concerned, he only has one lover. But you have to ask yourself this question. I know you love God, but are you a lover of God? Because if you're a lover of God, a lover is on 24/7. A lover is available. And so that's why sometimes in the natural people look elsewhere, because they don't feel that there's any lights that go on when they show up in front of the person that they've loved for so many years. The lights are going out, so they don't know how to handle that. It's intoxicating to be around someone who thinks you're delightful. And God feels that way about you. For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth, the time of the singing of birds has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. You know, that feels like the season that we're in right now, doesn't it to you? Everything's alive, everything's burgeoning, everything's reproducing, everybody, all the creation is happy. You know, when we were in the middle of our argument, sitting in our driveway yesterday, I went, oh my gosh, that's the first time I've ever seen a golden lizard. And so there was a golden lizard on the top of our fence, and he didn't leave us. And so we were sitting in the car. We didn't want to get out. We were engaged in our conversation, and so we were clicking our cameras trying to get the right angle. And I thought I was just seeing things. Maybe it was a leaf that went by, but it was a golden lizard, and it was sitting on the top of the fence, and it came right back up, perched, showing off. And then he'd bulge out this, what do you call it? What do you call it? His blanket? I didn't know that. Okay. And he would spread out this under his throat, this bright orange blanket. He would spread it out. And so and then he'd go. So I said, he's just showing off. He's trying to find an online date. Then we're still in the middle of our frustration or our argument. My husband says, look over there. So in the tree right next to me, there's a dark, dark, dark brown lizard who's doing the same thing. Tap, 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 tap. And then his blanket comes out under his throat, that bright orange. And I said, oh my gosh, this is dating season. And so he was talking about how the turtle dove is heard in our land. It's the time for things to mature. It's the time for things to ripen. It's the time to enjoy a harvest. The fig tree puts forth and ripens her green figs, and the vines are in blossom and give forth their fragrance. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. So what I believe the Lord is saying here is, don't miss this season. You know, when my husband and I concluded our conflict yesterday, the point of everything was, honey, I want to spend the rest of my life enjoying you. I don't want to be away from you. We have extraordinary history. I want to enjoy these days with you. And just the day before, he said, I don't want to be a grumpy old man. I said, thank God. Thank God. Then don't be. If he doesn't want to be a grumpy old man, then he's got to do some things, right? If I want to be happy and excited for the rest of my life, loving my husband, all the days of my life, I've got to do some things, right? You've got to make adjustments. So I thought it was neat in this particular verse how it's talking about the maturity and the harvest and the ripening of the fruit and everything that's going on. And he says, arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. Let's spend time. Don't just stay in the drudgery of everyday life. Let's create something brand new. So I went with him, and when we were climbing the rocky steps up the hillside, my beloved shepherd said to me, O my dove, while you are here in the seclusion of the clefts in the solid rock. Doesn't that sound interesting? How God said to, was it Moses or Abraham, I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock. I will hide you there. What was he doing? He was talking to him. And he said, so I went, when we were climbing, He said, "Oh, my dove, while you are here in the seclusion of the clefts of the solid rock, in the shelter and secret place of the cliff, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely." That's what happened yesterday when I tapped into the loving side of my husband. He didn't want to be away from me. He wanted to hear my voice. He was blowing up my phone with texts. It did something. My love and my acceptance of him pushed all the buttons. And what do you think you do when you respond to God in a way that shows him that you want to put everything else aside and concentrate only on his presence? What do you think it does for him? Well, you won't know until you do it. My heart was touched, and I fervently sang to him my desire. Take for us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards of our love, for our vineyards are in blossom. Okay, I want to stop there, and I'll pick it up next week at verse 16, because that's heavy. Verse 16 and 17 are heavy. But it says, my heart was touched, and I fervently sang to him my desire. Take for us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards. Okay, what does that indicate? Foxes on their level, they're not the big dogs in the food chain, but foxes on their level can be destructive. And in their level of the food chain, they can be predators. So it's interesting that they're saying, take the foxes. In other words, remove them. Those that can come and disturb or destroy the blossoms, the new blossoms that are taking place, the tender plants. Take the foxes away from that environment. I want to encourage you on both levels. Where the Lord is concerned, maybe you've never taken the time to isolate and be with him. I'm talking to leaders constantly who don't know how to do it. Some people are near divorce. They're ready to walk away from their minister husband. I'm thinking to myself, don't waste a perfectly good man. Just go spend time with God. Get in that place where you spend time with him until everything you have and everything you're in charge of becomes beautiful. And it will happen if you're spending time with him. And so this ordeal of taking the foxes. Now, I Googled it to try to find out how foxes spoil vines. I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't seen it yet. No one's taught me that yet. But I do know that the foxes are indicating a destructive force, and they're aggravating. It's like a farmer who's waiting to shoot the fox so they don't get into the chicken coop. You see what I mean? They're not really huge predators, but they're enough to bother his livelihood. And so they're out trying to send pot shots to these critters that are annoying. And some farmers won't just outright kill the foxes because they know that they're useful for the ecosystem. So they'll just, BB shoot them or something, discourage them, or put up electric fences or something. Do something to make it a hurtful thing to come near what they're protecting. And so I think we ought to look at that too, not only our intimate relationships like I try to do with my husband all the time, protecting our relationship, protecting our intimacy, and especially protecting our individual walk with God. That's so important that we encourage each other. But I also believe that we're supposed to protect our intimacy with God this way. Because how many of you know that you can come to church and get high? And then you don't even have to wait for Monday. It could be by the end of that day where something's coming in to take away that joy, that peace, that acceptance, that word coming to take away and destroy your disposition on the same day that you were blessed. So what happens, you and I have to protect that. We have to protect God's growth in our life. We have to protect our relationship with Him in our life. I want you to be encouraged in that, and I want you to look for ways to do that. And remember, it's the Lord, or the male figure in this story, in this song that's saying, "Come away, my beloved." In other words, if you just step away from all of your busyness just long enough for me to pour my love on you. We've seen that happen here at this church when you're spending time with Him today, listening to His Word, when we come together at the 10:30 service, worshiping Him, loving Him, collectively being here together, listening to the Word. Then we're able to love each other, being sensitive to each other to see how we can hug, minister a kind word, or even pray for each other. We're sensitive to each other in this church. We've been taught that. But Satan can come by midnight tonight and do something disruptive or disturbing to you. And so we have to learn how to say, no, no, fox, no, dragon, no, serpent, you're not coming. You're not going to take away what I just received. You're not going to smudge this. You're not going to nibble at it. You're not going to destroy the place that I have obtained in God. You're not going to take this away from me. And so I encourage you to do that, to spend time with Him, to push everything else aside so that you can sit quietly in the presence of the Lord. I don't know where you do it. You know, you might go and park down at the beach. I might park down at the beach, but I ain't getting out of the car in this weather. But that time of isolation, you know, some people run into their closets. Some people just, John Wesley's mother of 19 kids, used to put her apron over her head. And when she put her apron over her head, all the kids were instructed, do not bother mommy. She's in the hiding place. But I guess a mother of 19 kids, that's the way you do it. But she also would take rides on horseback with her husband. But I don't know, you know, I thank God I've had the opportunity to literally remove myself from my busyness and be in the presence of the Lord and reap the benefits of His love towards me. Okay, were y'all blessed today? All right, we're gonna close in prayer. Thank you. Thank you.